Welcome to the UPSC News Analysis for 09 July 2025. Every concept in the text explained. This episode breaks down key current affairs, explains basic concepts, and highlights main relevant issues, all tailored for UPSC aspirants. We know you're working hard, so today we're aiming to cut through the noise, really help you grasp this critical information quickly, and understand what it means for your preparation. We've got quite a bit to cover, a real deep dive today. We'll be touching on the conflict in Gaza, India's R&D strategy, a potential constitutional issue brewing in Bihar, and even how the new legal code impacts free speech. So let's unpack this. First up, Gaza. It's still a devastating situation, dominates the headlines. Reports suggest over 70,000 Palestinians killed in just 20 months. There's huge international pressure for a ceasefire, but it just seems stalled. What's really going on? Who are the key players here?
Well, at its core, it's the conflict between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. You've got Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, known for his, let's say, hardline approach. And then on the international stage, you have figures like former U.S. President Trump. Netanyahu praised him, but Trump's also faced criticism for, well, not doing much about Gaza, despite past influence. The world is pushing for a ceasefire, basically a stop to the fighting, often discussed, indirectly through the Doha talks with Qatar mediating. And a huge sticking point is this Rafah plan from Israel. They want to move Gaza's 2.3 million people to Rafah, calling it a humanitarian city. But almost everyone sees it as forced displacement. Highly controversial.
Right. And the latest news seems to underscore that complexity. Netanyahu was just at the White House, right? Praising Trump quite openly, but really dodging any solid commitment on a Gaza ceasefire. That contrast is quite stark. And at the same time, these disturbing reports, Israel actually planning to forcibly move people to Rafah. Apparently, Defense Minister Katz told the IDF to make the plan. Though, interestingly, the IDF chief, Eyal Zamir, reportedly had serious reservations, worried about the backlash.
Yeah, and what's deeply concerning are the ongoing humanitarian violations. We're talking civilian deaths, children too, widespread starvation, reports of sniper attacks on people trying to get aid, and just not enough medical care. It's dire. It really makes you question leadership, Trump intervened before, reportedly stopping Israeli jets during the Iran conflict, but nothing significant on Gaza. It raises questions about this concept of green light power, where a big power support or even just its silence kind of enables conflict.
That dependency point is crucial, isn't it? Netanyahu seems to really rely on U.S. support militarily, diplomatically, especially now with those ICC charges hanging over him. So what's the bigger international picture? How's the world actually responding?
Absolutely. The U.S. is key. Even if they aren't officially mediating, they have the most leverage to pressure Israel. And that ICC arrest warrant for Netanyahu, that's a huge development. War crimes, crimes against humanity. It puts intense global focus on the situation. Meanwhile, the Doha talks continue, trying to find a path. And you have the UN, various international bodies, all pointing fingers at Israel's actions, saying they violate international law. The ethical problem for superpowers is massive. When countries like the U.S. keep sending aid while these accusations fly, it potentially weakens the whole global human rights system they say they support.
So connecting the dots for our listeners, beyond the headlines, what are the critical issues for Mainz? And realistically, what's the way forward here?
Okay, the main issues. Blatant violations of international law, the sheer scale of the humanitarian disaster, and the strategic use of forced displacement. Even weaponizing food and aid, it's grim. For the way forward, well, immediate U.S. pressure is needed, using both military and diplomatic leverage to stop Israeli operations. A ceasefire is paramount, backed by a UN resolution, maybe with third-party monitors. Then you need a proper, independent international investigation into war crimes, UN, ICC involved. And critically, protected humanitarian corridors for aid and, if needed, evacuation. And long-term, renewed serious efforts for a two-state solution, but under real international supervision this time.
Got it. And for quick recall, prelims focus points.
Right. Remember, Rafah, IDF, the ICC arrest warrant for Netanyahu, Doha talks, U.S. military aid, the Geneva Conventions, and that concept of green light power.
Okay, let's shift focus now. Closer to home, India's research and development, R&D. It's vital for competitiveness, we all know that. What's the background on India's R&D challenges, and what's this new RDI scheme we're hearing about?
Right, R&D. It's the engine for innovation, for economic growth. India set up the Anusandhan National Research Foundation, ANRF, that's meant to coordinate things, bring in private money. And now there's the RDI scheme, Research and Development Innovation Scheme. It's big, 1 lakh crore. To measure progress, we use TRLs, Technology Readiness Levels. It's a scale, basically. Tier 1 is just the basic idea. Tier 9 means it's fully deployed out in the real world.
And the news is the Union Cabinet just gave the green light to this 1 lakh crore RDI scheme operating under ANRF. The big idea seems to be getting the private sector more involved, reducing the government's share of R&D spending, which is currently, 70%? But here's a crucial detail. The funding is low-interest loans and only for projects already at TRL of 4 or higher. So they need some level of maturity already.
Exactly, and that TRL4 threshold is where some critics are raising concerns. The argument is, well, does this leave out the really early-stage fundamental research, the kind that's risky but could lead to big breakthroughs? Plus, there are these deeper structural problems in India's R&D system, like not enough skilled manufacturing to actually make the stuff we invent, and the persistent brain-drained talented researchers leaving for better opportunities elsewhere.
We have seen government efforts before, haven't we? The ANRF bill itself in 2023, the Science, Technology, and Innovation Policy, STIP, setting the stage. How does this new RDI scheme fit into addressing those bigger, long-standing challenges?
Okay, so connecting this remains relevance. The issues are pretty clear. India's R&D spending is low, hovering around 0.7% of GDP. Developed countries, they're often at 2–3%. The RDI scheme's focus on TRL4 and above might, as critics fear, not nurture that foundational risky research. We still struggle with linking academia and industry effectively, and we lose talent. And the impact? Well, it holds back India's potential as a tech powerhouse. We end up less self-reliant in crucial areas. Think AI, semiconductors, defense. It even slows progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. Governance-wise, you have questions about fairness and who gets the funds, and how ANRF ensures accountability.
So what's the path forward then? How do we really boost India's innovation and tackle these issues head-on?
A few things could help. Maybe broaden eligibility for funds to include TRL1 to TRL3, really nurture that basic research pipeline. We could set up public funding channels that are more tolerant of risk, something like the DARPA model in the US perhaps. Definitely needs stronger links between universities and industry, and crucially, invest heavily in skilled manufacturing. Plus, incentives, better fellowships, world-class labs to keep our talent here.
And for prelims on this.
Key things: ANRF, the apex body, the TRL scale, remember TRL4 for RDI, the RDI scheme itself, 1 lakh crore, aiming for 70% private funding eventually, and India's R&D spend, around 0.7% of GDP. Maybe be aware of global examples like DARPA too.
All right, next up, a really contentious issue emerging from Bihar, the Special Intensive Revision, or SIR, of electoral rolls. Locals are apparently calling it vote bandy, comparing it to demonetization. That's quite a comparison. What is SIR and why the alarm bells?
Right, vote bandy. That tells you something about the public perception. So SIR, Special Intensive Revision, is supposed to be a process to update the electoral rolls, the list of who can vote. But this Bihar exercise is causing huge concern. The vote bandy nickname connects it to the disruption and potential exclusion people felt during demonetization. It also echoes some fears around processes like the NRC in Assam, regarding citizenship and who gets left out. The big fear here is disenfranchisement, people losing their right to vote.
And the news itself is quite startling. June 24th, Bihar launches the sudden, massive revision, the first in over 2 decades. And get this. They're demanding 11 specific documents, but explicitly not accepting things like Aadhaar or even existing voter ID cards. Instead, people need things like birth certificates, land records, often harder to get, while common documents like job cards or ration cards are rejected. And the deadline, just 1 month. During the monsoon, when there are floods and when many migrant workers are away, the risk, especially for migrant workers, seems enormous.
It really does. Migrant workers could easily be excluded if someone claims they don't ordinarily reside there anymore. And what's perhaps even more alarming is the Election Commission apparently plans to take this model national. That prospect raises serious fears of mass disenfranchisement across India.
Okay, this definitely sounds legally questionable. How does this SIR stack up against the Constitution and the laws governing elections, like the Representation of the People Acts?
That's the crucial question. It touches on Article 324, the EC's powers, but those powers have limits. PDT Akari, the former Lok Sabha Secretary General, has pointed out some major legal issues. First, the qualifying date they're using, July 1st, 2025. The law, RPA 1950, specifically mandates January 1st for roll revisions. That seems clearly wrong. Second, Section 21.3 of the RPA 1950 allows revision for a part of a constituency, maybe a whole constituency in specific cases, but not usually an entire state like this. And interestingly, the term special intensive revision itself, it doesn't actually exist in the RPA 1950 or 1951. There's no legal basis for it. It reminds you of the Mohinder Singh Gill case back in '78, where the Supreme Court said the ECI has powers where laws are silent, but it can't override existing laws.
So beyond the legal arguments, what does this vote, Andy, mean for democracy, for ordinary citizens? What are the deeper societal implications here?
Okay, connecting this to the bigger picture for Maine's, the implications are huge. This looks like a violation of universal adult franchise, basically, creating new hurdles to vote. It flips the burden of proof. Instead of the state proving someone isn't eligible, the citizen has to prove they are, often with difficult documents. That's not how natural justice usually works. The impact will likely fall hardest on the poor, the less educated, migrant populations, people who often lack these specific documents. They risk being automatically left out. This undermines democracy itself. It risks creating second-grade citizens, people who are citizens but can't vote, and there's a real danger of it disproportionately affecting specific groups: SEs, STs, OBCs, Muslims, landless laborers. From a governance angle, it lacks transparency. There are worries it could be misused to skew election results. It raises fundamental constitutional questions under Articles 14, equality, 21, life, liberty, and 326, universal suffrage.
Given all these serious red flags, what's the way forward? How can this be resolved to protect voting rights?
Well, first step seems obvious. Suspend this SR in Bihar immediately. Pause it until there's proper consultation review. The ECI needs to accept commonly held documents. Aadhaar, voter ID, ration cards, job cards should be valid proof. If such a massive verification is absolutely necessary, it needs strict Supreme Court oversight, much like the NRC process had. We also need public awareness campaigns and free legal aid for people struggling with this process. And crucially, before even thinking about a national rollout, a joint parliamentary committee should examine the whole idea: legality, feasibility, impact. Thorough scrutiny is needed.
Okay. Prelims points to note here.
Remember SIR, Special Intensive Revision, the key articles, 326, 1421, the documents issue, what's not accepted versus what's demanded, the NRC comparison, Article 324, RPA 1950 and 1951, especially Section 21, and that Mohinder Singh Gill case.
All right, let's move south now to Andhra Pradesh. There's this massive infrastructure plan, the Polavaram-Bonakacherla Link project, pitched as a grand vision for water, but also seen as a bit of a risky gamble. What's the basic idea?
It's ambitious, definitely. We're talking 81,900 crore. The goal is to take surplus water from the Godavari River and transfer it to Rayalaseema, which is often drought hit. The main feature is a huge 19.5-kilometer tunnel right through the Nallamala forest. It's planned under a hybrid annuity model HAM for funding. That means a mix of government money, private investment, and loans. This fits into the larger national idea of river interlinking, specifically Godavari Krishna here. The Central Water Commission, CWC, is involved technically, and the AP Reorganization Act of 2014 is relevant because it governs these post-bifurcation water projects.
But the risky gamble part came into focus recently, didn't it? The expert appraisal committee actually denied environmental clearance. Why, and what are the big hurdles this project is facing?
Yeah, that denial was significant. The main reasons were needing to properly consult the CWC and review the old Godavari Water Disputes Tribunal Award first. Plus, Telangana has officially objected, saying it violates the AP Reorganization Act because there wasn't proper consultation. The challenges are pretty stark. First, the ecological damage that tunnel goes through the Nallamala forest, which is also a tiger reserve. Major environmental concerns. Second, the energy needed is massive. It requires something like 3,377 megawatts to run the pumps, but the project itself only generates about 430 MWA. That's a huge power deficit for a state already facing financial stress. Third, the water availability itself is questioned. This idea of surplus floodwaters in the Godavari needs more solid proof. And fourth, the funding structure. Nearly 41,000 crore in loans, over 16,000 crore from private sources. And worryingly, the responsibility for getting clearances seems to have been put on the contractors. That raises governance flags.
This feels familiar. Didn't Andhra Pradesh set up a special body, the Jalharathi Corporation, for this? And isn't there a parallel with Telangana's Kaleshwaram project, which also faced CWC questions? How does all this play out in terms of policy, federalism, and even ethics?
Yes, exactly. The Jalharathi Corporation was set up specifically for this, and the Kaleshwaram comparison is apt. Similar questions about water availability and overall feasibility were raised there too. So for Maine's relevance, this project is in a kind of legal limbo without clear water sharing agreements and by potentially bypassing the river boards. Environmentally, the Nallamala impact is critical. Economically, the energy inefficiency and massive cost raise serious cost-benefit questions. Is this the best use of public funds? Especially when simpler, gravity-based options like the Gallarunagari project remain incomplete. And politically, it could definitely worsen tensions between Andhra Pradesh and Telangana over water resources, straining federal relations.
So given these deep complexities, what's a sensible path forward? How should AP approach this?
Well, dialogue seems essential. Reopening talks between AP and Telangana, maybe with the center mediating under legal oversight. A completely fresh, independent environmental impact assessment is needed, with very specific safeguards for the Tiger Reserve. The surplus water claim needs rigorous, independent verification using long-term data. They should seriously reevaluate and prioritize those gravity-based alternatives like Galari-Nagari first. They're often more sustainable and cost-effective. And the funding needs transparency and proper legal grounding, ensuring the state, not just contractors, is accountable. Okay. Key prelims takeaways for this one. Remember the cost, 81,900 crore, the tunnel length, 19.5 kilometers, Nillamala Forest Tiger Reserve context, the huge power deficit, 3,377 millimeter needed versus 430 millimeter generated, Jalaharathi Corporation, the AP Reorganization Act 2014, the role of CWC, and maybe Kileshwaram as a comparable example.
All right, final topic for today. Let's shift to freedom of expression and the new criminal laws. There's a specific case involving a cartoonist, Hemant Malviya, denied bail. This really brings the new Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, the BNS, into focus. What's the basic legal context we need here?
Okay, so the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, or BNS, took effect July 1st, 2025, replacing the old Indian Penal Code, IPC. Freedom of speech is still there, Article 19(1)A of the Constitution, but it always comes with those reasonable restrictions. And importantly, anticipatory bail, trying to get bail before arrest, is now governed by the Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita, or BNSS, which replaced the Criminal Procedure Code, CRPC. The courts always have this tricky balancing act with cartoons and satire, where does humor or criticism cross the line into something illegal?
And the specific news here is about Hemant Malviya, a cartoonist based in Indore. The MP High Court denied him anticipatory bail recently. Why? It relates to a cartoon involving PM Modi, the RSS, and a comment about Lord Shiva. The FIR was filed back in May, and his bail plea was rejected on July 3rd. The accusation is that the cartoon was malicious, aimed at promoting disharmony, and hurt religious feelings. Which parts of the new BNS are relevant in such a case?
Right. This case likely involves a few key sections of the BNS. Section 198 is the big one. It replaces IPC 153A and deals with promoting enmity between different groups. Then there's Section 203, replacing IPC 295A, which covers deliberate acts intended to outrage religious feelings. You might also see Section 199 mention imputations against national integration, or even Section 354 on defamation. A crucial point is that offenses under sections like 198 and 203 are often cognizable, police can arrest without a warrant, and non-bailable. This makes getting anticipatory bail like Malviya sought much harder.
This case definitely seems to have wider implications then for how the new laws might affect free speech, especially for artists, satirists, journalists. What are the main issues and challenges this highlights for polity and governance?
Yeah, it throws that classic debate into sharp relief. Where's the line between free expression, even provocative expression, and illegal acts like defamation or inciting hatred? A major concern with the BNS, which commentators have raised, is the potential vagueness in some provisions. Could they be misused to stifle criticism or dissent? That's the worry. The judiciary's role becomes absolutely critical here. Denying anticipatory bail, especially for speech-related cases, can feel like punishment before trial. This could create a chilling effect, making cartoonists, writers, journalists afraid to tackle sensitive subjects. It really fuels the debate around Article 19A and its restrictions under 19.2. Are the restrictions truly reasonable, or are they potentially overreaching?
So, faced with this, what's the way forward? How can we ensure free expression remains protected under the new legal framework?
Several things are crucial. The judiciary needs to interpret these BNS provisions strictly and narrowly, always prioritizing fundamental rights. Clear standard operating procedures, or SOPs, for police registering FIRs under sections like 198 and 203 could help prevent knee-jerk reactions or misuse. Public awareness is also important, making it clear that criticizing public figures or policies isn't automatically sedition or a religious insult, and maybe fostering what you could call satirical literacy in society. Understanding that satire, even when uncomfortable, plays a vital role in a healthy democracy.
Understood. And the prelims points for this topic.
Key things: BNS Section 198, promoting enmity; BNS Section 203, outraging religious feelings; BNSS governs anticipatory bail; the general rights of cartoonists protected under 19A but subject to BNS restrictions; and of course, Article 19 themselves.
Subscribe for daily updates and drop a comment to share your thoughts. Please join the Telegram channel link given in the description to read this news and solve a quiz based on this. Jai Hind. As you prepare for your aspirations, remember that truly understanding these events, their roots, their implications, and their legal frameworks is not just about passing an exam, but about shaping a well-informed future. We encourage you to keep questioning, keep connecting the dots. Thank you for diving deep with us today. We look forward to our next deep dive.